Alright, if saying no makes you anxious, uncomfortable, or ashamed, this isn't about confidence, it's about conditioning. You don't struggle with boundaries, you struggle with what happens after you set them. Because every time you choose yourself, it feels like you're doing something wrong. Welcome to Spark, a place for healing. Today we're breaking something most people never question. Why doing the right thing for yourself feels like you're hurting someone else. Because you can understand boundaries. You can read about them. You can agree with them. You can even tell other people to use them and still not use them yourself. You can feel overwhelmed and still say yes. You can feel disrespected and still stay quiet. You can feel drained and still show up again. And this creates a very specific confusion because logically you know what to do, but emotionally you can't follow through. And that gap is not about intelligence, it's about conditioning. Because somewhere along the way, your system learned this. Self-protection creates tension, and tension feels dangerous. So instead of protecting yourself, you protect the relationship, even when it costs you. The pattern is quiet. It doesn't look like a problem at first. In fact, it often looks like a strength. You're the understanding one, the patient one, the emotionally aware one. You don't escalate things. You don't make situations harder. You don't create conflict. You smooth things out. And people appreciate that. They trust you, they rely on you, they feel safe around you. But what they don't see is the constant internal work it takes to be that person. Because behind that calm exterior, you're scanning, adjusting, calculating. Is this too much? Should I say something? Maybe I would just let it go. And over time, this becomes your default. You stop checking in with yourself and start managing everyone else. And that's the moment boundaries start disappearing. Not because you don't have them, but because you override them. This doesn't come out of nowhere. Most of the time, it starts early. If you grew up in an environment where emotions were unpredictable, conflict felt unsafe, love felt conditional, then you adapt. You learn to stay connected by staying easy. Easy to deal with, to understand, to not burden others. And that adaptation worked. It kept things stable. It helped you belong. But now, it's creating a different problem. Because what once protected connection is now preventing honesty. So now, fast forward, you try to set a boundary, and immediately guilt shows up. Not later, immediately. And it feels convincing, like you've done something wrong, like you need to fix something, like you need to soften what you just said. But here's the truth. That guilt is not coming from harm. It's coming from disruption. You disrupted a pattern, and your system reacts to that. Because patterns are how your brain predicts safety. And when you break one, your brain tries to pull you back. Not toward what's right, toward what's familiar. This is one of the most important shifts. Guilt is not always truth. It's often just a signal that something's changing. If you spent years saying yes when you meant no, explaining everything, prioritizing others, then doing the opposite will feel wrong. Not because it is wrong, but because it is new. And new things feel unsafe at first. So instead of asking, why do I feel guilty? Ask, is this guilt coming from harm or from growth? Because those feel the same in your body, but they're not the same. Most people misunderstand boundaries completely. They think boundaries are about controlling behavior, but they're not. As Joe Hudson explains, a boundary is not telling someone what they must do, it's deciding what you will do.
You're not ever telling somebody else what they're supposed to do. That's a power struggle. It's not a boundary. It's you telling them what you're going to do.
So instead of, you need to stop doing that, a real boundary sounds like this. If this continues, I'm going to step away. That's it. No control, no force, no power struggle. Just ownership. And this changes everything, because now you're not trying to change them, you're choosing yourself. This is where boundaries actually become powerful, because when you stop trying to control others, you stop entering power struggles. And something shifts. You become calmer, clearer, more stable, because your energy is no longer tied to whether they change. It's tied to what you will do. And that creates predictability for you and for the relationship. This is where people get it wrong. They think boundaries push people away. But the opposite is true. As Baya Voce explains, a boundary is what allows you to stay open.
I can't actually hear you and show up if you keep talking to me like that. So I'm gonna leave, and then let's come back in 20 minutes when we both calm down and I'm happy to continue the conversation. That's a boundary.
Because without boundaries, you don't stay open. You shut down, you withdraw, you disconnect, you build resentment. So boundaries don't break connection, they prevent silent disconnection. Now let's talk about something most people avoid: anger. Because anger is deeply connected to boundaries, as Dr. Gabor Mate explains. Healthy anger is simply the body saying, this is my space.
Anger is a boundary defense. Healthy anger is simply when somebody is intruding on your space and they won't resist. You say, you're in my space, get out.
It's immediate, it's clean, it doesn't linger. But many people were taught to suppress it. So instead of expressing boundaries, they suppress signals. And that creates a problem, because when you suppress anger, you suppress awareness of your limits. And when you lose that, you lose access to your boundaries. Suppressed anger doesn't disappear. It builds slowly, quietly, until it turns into resentment, burnout, and emotional distance. And now, you're not setting boundaries calmly, you're reacting late. And that's when things feel overwhelming. So the goal is not to remove anger, it's to recognize it early as information, as a signal, as your boundary trying to speak. At some point, you reach a shift. And it sounds something like this.
I just don't have the capacity to tiptoe around people's triggers.
What'd you say? Again, you said you don't have the capacity to do what?
To tiptoe around people's triggers. Because if you're constantly triggered just by my presence, by my typical conversation, if this is just who I am, then that's okay. We just might not supposed to be friends in this capacity because we have differing personality types.
This is not aggression. This is clarity. Because if your normal presence is constantly a problem for someone, then maybe the issue isn't you. Maybe the dynamic doesn't fit. And that's important, because boundaries are not just about behavior, they're about compatibility. When you change, people react. Some will respect it, some won't. because your old behavior was easier for them. And when you introduce limits, it disrupts the system. But remember, they're not reacting to your boundary. They're reacting to losing access. Most people weaken boundaries by explaining them. Not for clarity, but for approval. So they over-justify. And once you justify, you open negotiation. But boundaries don't need approval. They need clarity. I'm not available. That doesn't work for me. That's enough. This is the hardest part. After the boundary comes guilt, and your instinct is to go back. But this is where growth happens. Pause. Don't act immediately. Let the feeling exist. Because if you reverse every time, you reinforce the old pattern. The goal is not to feel comfortable. The goal is to act aligned. Comfort comes later. And every time you hold your boundary, even while uncomfortable, you teach your system this is safe too. Every time you ignore your limits, you lose trust in yourself. Every time you honor them, you rebuild it. And that's what boundaries really give you: self-trust. I'm not available. That doesn't work for me. I'm not comfortable with that. I'm leaving if this continues. My answer is still no. Simple, consistent, clear. If boundaries make you feel guilty, it doesn't mean you're selfish. It means you're changing. You're stepping out of a pattern that once kept you safe, but now keeps you stuck. And yes, it will feel uncomfortable. But on the other side, there is relief, clarity, energy, and most importantly, self-respect. So the next time guilt shows up, pause. And remember, guilt is not always a sign that you did something wrong. Sometimes it's just the feeling of finally choosing yourself. That's it for today. Thanks for spending this time with us. If this resonated, take a moment and comment on what your body is learning right now. Naming it is part of the process. Share, like, and comment, and be part of our community. We're Spark Growth, your companion on the path of healing.